Nebraska Extension forage specialist Bruce Anderson says we're approaching the time of year when farmers think about making hay from small grains. Bruce says the forages can be beneficial for an operation, but producers need to be aware of how maturity can affect nutrition and tonnage. Plus, he says there are some safety implications to the animals that farmers should consider. We talked with Bruce Thursday afternoon and began by discussing the small grains that will likely be used to make hay in Nebraska.
We're primarily going to be talking about those that were planted last fall, things like winter wheat, rye, triticale, and what could be made into either hay or silage around this time of the year.
What kind of benefit could those things add to your operation?
Well, they may not be as good as corn silage or alfalfa hay, but they can really fit a lot of situations where we do need a little extra feed for the livestock, and since we've got them growing out there right now, we might as well take advantage of them.
So what all depends in how you produce these things and how you harvest them and what you actually get out of it?
Well, I think the most important thing we need to be considering is really the maturity of the plants when we do the harvest, because everything tends to revolve around the maturity of those plants, the nutritional quality of the feed that we harvest, the tonnage that we get from it, and also some safety factors that might be considered in regards to these types of feeds.
How do you know about the timing and how much changes from, day to day?
Well, one of the things that you really want to know before you harvest is what kind of animals are you going to be feeding it to begin with. If we're going to be feeding it to animals that have fairly high nutrient demands, things like young calves or replacement heifers or yearling stockers, they may need a higher quality feed, and so we're going to be harvesting these things when those plants are relatively young, maybe in the boot stage. But if we're going to give it to dry cows, they can get by with lower quality feeds, a little less protein, so we can wait and harvest a bit later and get more tonnage off of the feed and still have acceptable forage quality.
Are there any safety things to keep in mind as you're going out to the field with this?
Well, I think that's one of the areas that people tend to overlook sometimes, especially if they're going to be making hay. We look at things like wheat, triticale, rye. The seed heads on these plants form fairly rough awns, and those rough awns can cause damage to the eyes, irritating mouth parts as the animals are trying to eat this hay. And so typically you may want to rather cut silage off of the more mature plants if they're going to have a lot of awns off of it, or cut the hay when the plants are still younger before the seed heads emerge in order to avoid some of these problems from the awns.
Is there a need to test these forages before you use them?
I think that's always a smart thing to be looking at. They can contain some higher levels of nitrates once in a while, so we want to make sure that we don't have any lethal problems with feeding them. And also getting the protein and energy content known will help us put together the rations that the animals are going to be eating on during the time that you're feeding these feeds.